In this video, we're telling the disturbing stories of 5 British tourists who vanished without a trace on what should have been carefree holidays. Their disappearances in places like Panama, Portugal, or even Disney cruise ships remain unsolved, a reason for grief, leaving their families still searching for answers. Join us as we uncover the why and how of these mysteries. In March 2011, Rebecca Coriam was a crew member on the Disney Wonder cruise ship. At 24 years old, Rebecca was generally considered a vibrant person who loved life and had a knack for adventure. Her job as a youth worker on the cruise ship was perfect for someone as happy as she was. But not everyone saw Rebecca as a carefree person, and not everyone was surprised when Rebecca Coriam's fate took a twisted, blood-chilling turn. On March 21, 2011, the Disney Wonder cruise ship was en route from Los Angeles to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Rebecca Coriam, a native of Chester, England, was one of hundreds of crew members on the ship. That day, the young woman sent her parents a message via Facebook, letting them know they should expect a call from her the following day. But the call never came. At about 5:45 a.m. on the morning of March 22nd, a CCTV camera saw Rebecca talking on one of the ship's internal phones in a crew area. The woman was wearing baggy clothes, none of which belonged to her, and appeared to be distraught. She finally walked away from the phone, pushing her hair back and putting her hands in her back pockets. Later that morning, at about 9 a.m., 24-year-old Rebecca Coriam failed to show up for her shift. Other crew members looked for her, but the young woman wasn't in her crowded room, and she didn't respond to being paged. The search continued, but it soon became obvious that Rebecca wasn't anywhere on the ship. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. As a result, the United States Coast Guard and the Mexican Navy were contacted to search the surrounding ocean waters, but their efforts yielded no clues. Under maritime law, the jurisdiction of the case fell to the Bahamas, where the Disney Wonder was registered. On March 25th, 3 days after Rebecca's disappearance, the Royal Bahamas Police Force sent a detective named Paul Roller to try and solve the mystery. The detective was flown to Los Angeles by Disney. However, what should have been an in-depth investigation concluded in only 1 day. The detective only interviewed 6 of the 950 members of the crew. He didn't interview any of the cruise's over 2,000 passengers before concluding that Rebecca Coriam must have been the victim of an accident. As such, Disney's official account suggested that Rebecca had been swept overboard by a rogue wave from Deck 5, a crew area near the ship's bridge. Several days after Rebecca's disappearance, and after the detective's investigation had concluded, Rebecca's parents, Mike and Ann Coriam, were flown to Los Angeles by Disney to meet with the detective and the ship's captain. Straight off the bat, the Coriams felt like they were treated, in their own words, Disney style. They were taken to the ship in a car with blacked-out windows. Once they reached the ship, they entered through the boat's back entrance, as passengers disembarked from the front. The family's skepticism grew when they were shown CCTV footage of Rebecca, in which their daughter appeared to be fine. The ship's captain explained that Rebecca likely had been swept from Deck 5, a crew area near the ship's bridge, by a rogue wave. However, Rebecca's family found this explanation implausible. The deck was surrounded by 6-foot-high walls, making it highly unlikely that a wave could wash someone overboard. Weather reports from the area also showed calm seas on the day of her disappearance. Mike and Ann Coriam decided to look into their daughter's disappearance themselves, with the help of a few other experts. Despite Disney's assertions, many inconsistencies and unsettling details have surfaced. A pair of Rebecca's shorts found in her cabin were torn, indicating a possible struggle. Months after her disappearance, there was activity on her bank account and changes to her Facebook password, suggesting someone might have had access to her accounts. Moreover, a flip-flop presented as Rebecca's had the wrong name and cabin number, raising further doubts about the evidence provided by Disney. Rebecca's parents, Mike and Ann Coriam, were critical of Disney's handling of the situation. They alleged that the company did not follow standard procedures, such as turning the ship around to search for Rebecca. They also claimed that the search coordinates provided to the Coast Guard and Navy were incorrect, leading to a search in the wrong area. Mike and Ann believed foul play might have been involved. especially since Rebecca was known to be in a tumultuous relationship with another female crew member and possibly an older male crew member. But some crew members suggested Rebecca harbored an underlying sadness. This complexity was underscored by Tracy Medley, Rebecca's girlfriend and co-worker, who revealed a passionate relationship and suggested Rebecca might have been distraught after a particularly emotional night. According to Tracy, Rebecca had spoken about ending her own life several times before the fateful morning of March 22, 2011. Tracy also said that Rebecca spent that night engaged in sexual activities with Tracy and her boyfriend. The shock of having to share her lover with another person, or possibly competing for Tracy's attention, could have sent Rebecca into a severe depression. Tracy Medley believes Rebecca wanted to escape both the ship and her life, which is why she climbed over the 6-foot railings of Deck 5 and jumped into the ocean. However, Rebecca's relatives and friends in England adamantly reject that she committed suicide. According to claims from crew members, family, friends, and law enforcement, Rebecca Coriam's case was mishandled from the beginning. 13 years after Rebecca's disappearance, her family continues to seek answers and justice. The mystery surrounding her fate remains unresolved, a chilling reminder of the potential dangers lurking beneath the surface of what is supposed to be a dream job on a luxury cruise ship. It was a warm summer day on July 24, 1991, and Ben Needham, a 21-month-old toddler, was staying with his family at his maternal grandparents' farmhouse in the village of Iraklis, near Kos Town. That morning, Ben's mother, Kerry, who was about 20 years old, headed off to work at a local hotel, leaving Ben in the care of his grandparents, Eddie and Christine Needham. Little did they know, this day would be the darkest day of their lives, plunging them into a decades-long painful mystery. The Needhams, who were originally from Sheffield in South Yorkshire, were working on renovating the farmhouse on Kos Island. It was about 2:30 p.m. that day when Eddie and Christine Needham, Ben's grandparents, realized the toddler was missing. Ben had spent the day going in and out of the house. At first, Eddie and Christine thought Ben had simply wandered off, perhaps with his teenage uncle Stephen, who was known to take Ben for rides on his moped. But as the minutes ticked by, and there was still no sign of Ben, their worry turned into dread. Panic set in as they combed the surrounding area, looking for the missing child. They looked and looked while calling his name, but there was no trace of little Ben, who was 3 months shy of his second birthday. The family contacted the local police, but at first, the police believed the Needhams themselves were responsible for Ben's disappearance, a regular practice, but one that slowed larger searches of important areas such as airports and docks. Time passed, and with it, any potential leads on Ben's whereabouts. An extensive search operation was conducted over the following 11 days. The Hellenic Police, Army, and Fire Brigade personnel scoured the island. Yet, despite their efforts, no trace of Ben Needham was found. There were no theories. There was no solution to this baffling case. As time passed, though, reported sightings of boys matching Ben's description flooded in, from Greece and beyond. But none of the more than 300 reported sightings turned fruitful. Ben's family was devastated. Nobody suffered more than Ben's mother, Kerry, who kept hoping Ben would someday come home to her. Years passed, and the case grew cold. In 2003, investigator Ian Crosby reignited public interest by launching a website dedicated to Ben's case, striving to keep the memory of the missing boy alive. A photograph surfaced showing a blonde boy in Turkey, which bore a striking resemblance to an age progression image of Ben. Yet this too led to a dead end. To assist with Ben's identification, age progression photos have been made and distributed on a regular basis. In October 2012, UK police restarted their search on Kos, citing a suspicion that Ben was unintentionally buried under building rubble by an excavator. Forensic archaeologists and HRD dogs combed the area, but no evidence of Ben was discovered. A breakthrough occurred in 2016 when a Kos local suggested he knew who was responsible for Ben Needham's disappearance. According to the man, a digger operator named Konstantinos Barkas confessed before his death to accidentally killing Ben and burying the body in building rubbish. Investigators knew that machinery, including a large digger, was used to clear some land behind the family's farmhouse on July 24, 1991. Another thorough search occurred. This time, investigators found a yellow dinky car, a toy which the Needham family identified as being in Ben's possession at the time of his disappearance. A year later, South Yorkshire police announced traces of blood were found on the toy, as well as on a fragment of a sandal. It was revealed in 2018 that the blood did not belong to Ben Needham, but investigators believe these findings cement the theory that Ben was indeed killed in an accident near the farmhouse. Despite the passage of time, Ben Needham's disappearance remains a haunting enigma. Ben's mother, Kerry, still hopes she will one day be reunited with her son. It was May 3rd, 2007, a Thursday, and the McCann family was enjoying their penultimate day of holiday in the sunny coastal town of Praia da Luz, Portugal. Kate and Jerry McCann, both physicians from Rothley, Leicestershire, UK, took their 3 children, Madeline, nearly 4, and her younger twin siblings, on this well-deserved break from their busy lives. They stayed at a family-friendly resort, the Ocean Club, with a group of family friends and their children. It was supposed to be a relaxing, happy time in their lives. Instead, the holiday ended with what is now widely regarded as the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history. That evening, Jerry and Kate McCann followed an already familiar routine. They put their children to bed in their ground floor apartment, number 5A, and headed to a nearby tapas restaurant within the resort complex. The restaurant was located about 180 feet from the apartment. The McCanns and their friends took turns checking on the sleeping children throughout the night. They were seated at a table from where the McCanns could actually see the top of their apartment, but not the doors. The children were seemingly safe, a fact confirmed by each of the parents who checked on them. But then, something changed. Shortly before 10 p.m., it was Kate McCann's turn to check on the children. Once she entered apartment 5A, Kate made a horrible discovery. She found an empty bed where Madeline should have been, and the bedroom window was open. Panic surged through her as she realized her little girl was missing. She left the apartment screaming and shouting, saying Madeline had been taken. The resort personnel, other vacationers, and the local police swiftly joined the McCanns in the search for their missing child. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of Madeline. The police were called, but some crucial mistakes were made in the immediate time period after the disappearance. Roadblocks weren't put in place until late the next morning, houses in the area weren't searched, and the crime scene was not secured, with around 20 people having entered apartment 5A before it was finally closed off. To top things off, it took Interpol 5 days to issue a global missing person alert. As news of the missing youngster spread, the media swarmed on Praia da Luz, transforming the sleepy tourist town into a frenzy of activity. The Portuguese police's early inquiry focused on the potential of an abduction, and border alerts were issued to prevent initial suspects from fleeing the country with Madeline. As days turned into weeks, the lack of progress in finding Madeline frustrated both the McCanns and the public. But then, the Portuguese police began to scrutinize the McCanns themselves, suspecting that they might be involved in their daughter's disappearance. This shift in focus caused tension and strained the relationship between the McCanns and the local authorities. Multiple articles in the Portuguese press alleged that the McCanns had been sedating their children and that the group of adults had formed a so-called pact of silence about the real events of that fateful night. Moreover, some reports said officers believed they had found traces of Madeline's blood in the McCanns' rented car. However, the Portuguese police played down the reports about the DNA evidence. Ultimately, there was no concrete evidence to implicate Kate and Jerry, but the stigma remained, with many people on social media still believing Kate and Jerry knew more than they let on. The McCanns did not give up their search for Madeline. They launched a global campaign to find her, using media coverage and the internet to spread her image and story far and wide. Reported sightings of strange individuals behaving strangely around the apartment on the day of Madeline's disappearance proved fruitless. In 2011, the British government ordered Scotland Yard to investigate the issue after receiving a request from the McCanns. The so-called Operation Grange resulted in a reopened inquiry and the discovery of fresh leads. Nevertheless, the case remained unsolved in spite of substantial resources and worldwide cooperation. German investigators made a shocking announcement in June 2020. They had discovered a new suspect, a German man named Christian Bruckner, who was residing in Portugal at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. The suspect was a convicted sex offender with a history of crimes against children. For those keeping track of the case as well as the McCanns, this finding offered fresh hope. The status of Madeleine McCann is still unknown while this suspect's inquiry is ongoing. Despite the passage of time, the world has not forgotten Madeleine, and the quest for the truth continues. As of 2024, Bruckner faces trial for unrelated offences near where Madeleine vanished. In 2003, 18-year-old Eddie Gibson from Hove, England, took a gap year after finishing high school and spent it travelling around the world, from England to Australia and then to Cambodia, where he met a local girl. After his gap year, Eddie returned home to the UK to start at the University of Brighton. However, 3 weeks later, he was off again. By the time it was October 21, 2004, now 19 years old, Eddie told his mother that university just wasn't for him. He was going back to Cambodia. Little did anyone know, this decision would change Eddie's life, forever. Most of Eddie's movements and actions in Cambodia remain unknown. What we do know is that soon after he left on his trip, the 19-year-old sent another email to his mother, Jo. This time, Eddie told his mother he was coming home to England on November 1st. He also gave her his flight times. Jo and Mike Gibson, Eddie's dad, went to meet Eddie at Heathrow Airport. But as time passed, they started to worry. They knew Eddie liked being one of the first off the flight, so where was he? Jo immediately started feeling like something was deeply wrong, and as fate had it, she was right. When they asked Thai Airways for help, Jo and Mike were told Eddie had never checked in at Bangkok. 4 officers from the Sussex Police Major Crime Branch unit spent 10 days in Phnom Penh, working alongside the National Police. But Eddie's whereabouts remained a mystery. Mike Gibson and Eddie's older brother Elliot flew to Cambodia just after Christmas in 2004. There, they found a taxi driver who had taken Eddie to a hostel. The hostel had Eddie's signature, but the trail went cold from there. Jo travelled to Cambodia in January 2005, alongside her new husband Tony and a couple of friends. They searched the streets of Phnom Penh and Angkor Wat, scoured the beaches, spoke on TV and on radio. They offered a £15,000 reward, but only false leads and dead ends emerged. People lied about having seen Eddie, hoping to get some of the reward money. Finally, Jo flew back home. She believed something terrible had happened to her son. The family returned to Cambodia time and time again, to no avail. In 2013, however, Eddie Gibson's family received information from a businessman with a military background in Southeast Asia, who the family met through a charity set up in Eddie's name. According to this man, Eddie met his untimely end in Phuaphet, a city on the Cambodia-Thailand border, where he was ambushed, bludgeoned to death with a shovel, and robbed of £2,000 to £3,000 cash he had on him, his travel money. In 2014, Cambodian authorities discovered human remains close to a lake near Phuaphet. Eddie's family was notified about the discovery. However, a joint investigation by the national and provincial authorities determined that the remains did not belong to Eddie. As of 2024, Eddie Gibson is still missing. In August 2009, Alex Humphrey, a 29-year-old support worker for children with learning difficulties from Stockport, Cheshire, set off on an independent sightseeing holiday to Panama. An experienced solo traveller, Alex had previously backpacked across America and Europe and came back unscathed. But Alex never made it back from Panama, leaving behind a world of hurt and countless questions. During his trip, Alex came to Boquete, a charming town in the province of Chiriquí, noted for its verdant surroundings and breathtaking waterfalls. Alex was last seen on August 14th, heading to the Balneario Majagua waterfall from Hostel Veron, where he had been staying. His absence became worrying very quickly when he did not return. August 29th was when his family had anticipated him back in Manchester, but as that date drew near and Alex failed to contact them, the sense of dread mounted. Something had to be wrong with the 29-year-old. The search for Alex began immediately, with his older brothers, Andrew and Martin, traveling to Panama to conduct national press interviews and collaborate with a search organization called Cineproc. The search efforts included boats, helicopters, and sniffer dogs. But despite these efforts, no trace of Alex was found. Alex's mother, Gil, decided to join the search in Panama. Gil understood the grim reality, but was driven by a desperate need to find her son. As a mother, she knew Alex well enough to confidently reason that his disappearance was not voluntary. He had left his belongings behind, an act completely out of character, which only intensified Gil's fears. But Gil's search yielded no new clues. The lack of evidence began to weigh heavily on the family. Theories about Alex's fate ranged from accidental injury to more sinister possibilities, but without concrete evidence, all they could do was speculate. The idea that he might have had an accident while exploring off the beaten path seemed plausible, yet no sign of him had surfaced. A burned and buried body was discovered close to Alex's last known location in February 2010. The body had been there for 3 months or more, but attempts to identify it were hindered by bureaucratic obstacles. Although the DNA could be extracted from the teeth by the Panamanian Forensic Institute, it took a long time for Interpol Panama to formally request a DNA sample from Alex's family through Interpol UK. The Panamanian authorities' reluctance to communicate and the British diplomatic protocol requirements created a nightmarish situation for Alex's grieving mother. Despite her acceptance of the possibility that Alex might be dead, the idea that his body could be lying unidentified in a Panamanian morgue was unbearable. As of July 2024, there is no new information about Alex Humphrey's disappearance.